Good morning, students. Welcome to your science class. Let's start our second video of chapter 12. Name of the chapter is Reproduction in Plants. The topics which we cover in this video are sexual reproduction, pollination, fertilization, fruit and seed formation, and seed dispersal. As we already discussed in our first video of this chapter about the reproduction and asexual mode of reproduction in plant. In this video, we will start with sexual reproduction in plants. As we know, in sexual reproduction, new plants are produced from seeds. Let's discuss in detail about the sexual reproduction in plants. As you already know, flower is the reproductive part of flowering plants. A typical flower has 4 parts. One is sepal, petal, stamen, and the carpel. Stamen and carpels are male and female reproductive parts of a flower, and the rest of the two, that is petal and sepals, are accessory parts of flower. Sepals are green and they protect the other part of flower before it blooms, or at the bud stage, sepals are the part which protect other part of flowers. Now come to the petals. Petals are either colored or white and are seen as the flower blooms. They usually attract insects, and the sepals and petals do not directly take part in reproduction. That's why they are known as accessory organs or accessory parts. Now come to the pistil or carpel, we also known as pistil. The pistil or carpel is the female reproductive organ of a flower, and stamen is the male reproductive part of a flower. Now discuss about the structure of carpel and stamen in detail. This stamen has a long filament. This is filament. Okay? Filament with an elongated sac-like structure on the tip. This is filament, and this is a swollen tip of a filament which is known as anther. It contains pollens. you also understand from this picture. Sorry. This is stamen. Stamen contain two parts. One is filament and other lobe-like structure on the top is known as anther. Anther contain the male reproductive cells, that is pollen. Anthers produce pollen grain. Now come to the carpel. Carpel has three main structure or three parts. The carpel has a stalk-like structure which is known as style. S-T-Y-L-E. And style has a sticky tape on the tip which is known as stigma and a swollen base which is known as ovary. That is, carpel has three main parts. First one is stigma, which is upper sticky end of a carpel, and a long filament like structure which is known as style, and large basal swollen portion which is known as ovary. The ovary contain one or more ovules which are female reproductive parts of female reproductive cells of a flower. Ovule contain the egg cells, the female gamete of a plant. Now come to the types of flower. On the basis of their reproductive organs, flowers are of two types. First one is unisexual flower and second one is bisexual flower. The flower which contains either pistil or female reproductive part or stamen is called unisexual flower. Like examples, papaya, flowers of papaya, flowers of watermelon, they have only one reproductive part, whether it is male reproductive part or female reproductive part. The flower which contain both male and female reproductive organs are known as full or bisexual flowers. Male reproductive part is stamen and female reproductive part is pistil or carpel. The examples of bisexual flowers are lily, sunflower, tulip, hibiscus, etc. All are the examples of bisexual flowers. Now the question is how the male gametes reach to the female gamete of a flower to form zygote. So the answer is the male gamete reach to the female gametes by the process of pollination and the production of seed, or simply we can say transfer of pollen grains from male reproductive part to the female reproductive part of a flower is known as pollination. Pollination is of two types. First one is self-pollination and second one is cross-pollination. If the pollen grains from a flower reach to the stigma of same flower or another flower of same plant is known as self-pollination. That is transfer of pollen from stamen or anther to the stigma of same flower or different flower of same plant is known as self-pollination. On the other hand, cross-pollination, when pollen grains from a flower reach to the stigma of another flower of another plant of same kind. Transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of flower of another plant is known as cross pollination. You can write, I repeat, when pollen grains from a flower reach the stigma of flower of another plant of same kind, then it is known as cross pollination. And self pollination is if the pollen grain from a flower reach the stigma of same flower or another flower of same plant, it is known as self pollination. Different birds, insects, bats and wind animals carry pollen grains from flower to flower. These different agents which carry pollen grains are known as pollinating agents. The flowers of these plants have special features that attract their pollinating agents. Different plants have different pollinating agents. Like bright petals of a flower attract birds or insects. So they have different type of adaptations to attract their pollinating agents. After transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma, they get fused, and the process of fusion of pollen, the male gamete, and the egg, which is a female gamete, is known as fertilization. When a pollen grain fall on the stigma of a flower of the same kind, the pollen develops a long tube which is known as pollen tube. This is a pollen tube. The pollen tube grow downward through the style. This is style of carpel towards the ovary. The male gametes are inside the pollen tube. Once inside the ovary, when they enters the ovary, this pollen tube enters the ovary, it enters the ovule which is present within the ovary. The male gamete fuse with the female gamete, that is ovule, to form a zygote. After the fusion of male gamete and the female gamete, a single celled structure is formed which is known as zygote. The process of fusion of male and female gamete is known as fertilization. The fertilized cell is known as zygote. The ovule develops into a seed. Now the ovule which is present within the ovary is developed into a seed, and the ovary develop into a fruit after fertilization. Now, how the fruit formed? After fertilization, when male and female gametes get fused, the petals and sepals gathered from the flower. Now, ovary start swelling. Ovary begins to swell. After swell up, the swelled ovary get converted into fruit, and the ovule which is present inside the ovary get converted into seed. Is it clear? And the sepals are present on the upper side of a fruit. Like strawberry have a green covering on their upper side. This green leaf-like structures are actually a sepal. Now come to the seed dispersal. The movement or transfer of seed away from their parent plant. The movement or transport of seeds away from their parent plant to ensure the germination and survival of some of the seeds to adult plants is known as seed dispersal. So this is the example of pollination. After pollination, the male and female gamete get fused, and after fusion, ovary develop into a fruit and ovule develop into a seed. When the seed formed, the seed has to be dispersed. Once the seeds dry, they get dispersed. Seed dispersal in the scattering of seeds over a large area by various means. The different means of seed dispersal are wind, water, animals, and explosion of fruits. Different means of seed dispersal help the plant as it helps the seed to reach a suitable medium for germination far away from the parent plants. Some plants like drumsticks and maples have winged seed which are carried by wind. The seeds of other plants like milkweed, silk cotton, and devil's tree have tufts of hair which help them to ride on the wind. So this is dispersal of seed by wind. Now come to the dispersal of seed by water. Seeds that are dispersed by water have spongy coat or a layer of fiber that make them light. This property helps them to float on water. The flowering water then carries them to far off places. From example, coconut, lotus, etc. Now come to the dispersal by animal. like birds, monkey, and other animals eat the fruit of many plants and throw away the seeds. Some plants have fruits or seeds with hooks, bristles, or spines. These get attached to the fur of animals or to our clothes. They are carried a long way before they fall off or are brushed off. By exploding fruits, the fruits of the rubber tree, balsam, ladyfinger, and night jasmine explode when they ripen. The sudden bursting of fruits scatter the seeds away from the parent plants. So these are the different methods of seed dispersal or seed travel. This is the overview of sexual reproduction. Firstly, flower blooms. After flowering, pollination starts. After pollination, male and female gametes get fused. This process is known as fertilization. After fertilization, ovary get converted into fruits and the ovule within the ovary get converted into seed. After the seed formation, they get dispersed off, and when they get suitable conditions, they germinate and form a new plant. So this is the whole cycle of sexual reproduction in plants. Now come to the classwork. The first question of your classwork is explain the difference between self-pollination and cross-pollination. So here is the difference between self and cross-pollination. As you know, the first difference is in self-pollination, pollen grains are transferred to the stigma of same flower or different flower of same plant. But on the cross-pollination, pollen grains are carried to stigma of another flower of different plant. Now come to the second difference, which is it occurs in bisexual flowers. Sexual flowers are those which have both the male and female reproductive organ. Occur in bisexual plants having anther and stigma maturing at same time. But in cross-pollination, occurs in bisexual flower having anther and stigma maturing at different time. Self-pollination takes place in plant like wheat, peas, etc. On the other hand, the cross-pollination takes place in plants like ladyfinger, tomato, brinjal, etc. Now come to the second question, which is how does the process of fertilization take place in flower? As you know, the fusion of male and female gamete is known as fertilization. When the pollen grains reach the stigma of same species flower, it starts growing out into the pollen tube of the stigma. This tube continues to grow inside this style till it reaches the ovule. Once it reaches to the ovule, the male cells are released from the pollen tube and get fused with ovule or egg cells to form a single cell structure which is known as zygote. After this process of fertilization, ovary develop into the fruit and the ovule get converted into seeds. Is it clear? Now come to the third question. You can take the screenshot of your question answer. Now come to the third question, which is describe the various ways by which seeds are dispersed. We just studied about seed dispersal. Some light seeds like that of madar, which are hairy, dry and small, are carried away by the wind to different places. Second one is spiny seeds and fruits that like that of xanthium and urina sticks to the cloths of passengers or passes by the animals. Now third one is some plants having heavy seeds like that of coconut water act as the dispersing agent, that is seed dispersal by water. Some seeds are dispersed with the fruit burst, as in case of balsam and castor. So this is your classwork. Now come to the homework. First question of your homework is fill in the blanks. First fill up is production of new individual from the vegetative part of parent is called. You have to write the correct answer. Production of new individual from vegetative part is known as question mark. Now second one is a flower may have either male or female reproductive part. If a flower have only one reproductive part, either male or female, such flower is called as, whether it is unisexual flower or bisexual flower, you have to write the correct answer. Now third fill up is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of same or of another flower of the same kind is known as self-pollination or cross-pollination. You have to write the correct answer here. Now fourth one is the fusion of male and female gamete is termed as. What is the term which is given to the fusion of male and female gamete? You have to write here. And the fifth fill up is seed dispersal takes place by means of. We have to write the correct answers. Seed dispersal take place by means of which. And the second question is of take the correct answer. MCQ type question. First one is the reproductive part of plant is whether it is leaf, stem, root or flower. You have to choose the correct option. Second question is the process of fusion of male and female gamete is called. What is the process which is name the process of fusion of male and female gamete, whether it is fertilization, pollination, reproduction or seed formation. And the third MCQ is mature ovary forms the seed. After maturation, ovary get converted into which part? Seed, stamen, pistil or fruit. So this is your homework. Now come to the solution of homework first. The first question was state the main difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. I hope you easily write the answer, but here's the answer. In asexual reproduction, only one parent part is involved, but in sexual reproduction, both male and female reproductive parts are involved. In asexual reproduction, it occurs in unisexual plants, but sexual reproduction occurs in bisexual plants. And asexual reproduction occurs in lower plants, but in higher plants, only the sexual reproduction occurs. Reproductive organs are not present in asexual reproduction, but fully developed reproductive parts are present in sexual reproduction. In most of the methods, the original parent disappears But in sexual reproduction, the original parents remain alive after the process of reproduction. Here is no need of seed in sexual reproduction, but seeds are used to get new plant from the flower in sexual reproduction. Characteristics of only one parents are inherited in asexual reproduction, but the characteristic of both the parents are inherited in sexual reproduction. So this is the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction. You can take the screenshot of this. And the second question was, match the column 1 and 2. So this is the answer. Like buds are related to which one? Like yeast reproduced by budding. Yeast is an example of an organism that can reproduce by budding. Eyes are related to potato. In vegetative propagation, potatoes are reproduced with the help of eyes or nodes. Third one is fragmentation. Fragmentation occurs in Spirogyra or algae. Spirogyra can reproduce only by fragmentation. Wings are related to mappers. We just studied in seed dispersal. And spores are related to bread molds or fungus, which is reproduced with the help of spore formation. So this is the correct answer. And the third question of your first homework is MCQ type. First MCQ is, a spore producing plant is, which one of them is a spore producing plant? So the right answer is bread mold. And second MCQ is, bryophyllum can be reproduced by its leaves. Leaves is a right answer. So this is your solution of your last homework. I hope you understand what I discussed in this video. So your chapter is completed now. Thank you.